over a decade, Kim and I have been compelled to explore the far corners of Alaska by fat bike. As winter settles in, rivers, bays, and lakes freeze, snow falls, and the mostly roadless state opens to travel and migration. Friends and distant family are visited. Hunting parties head to ancient hunting grounds for caribou, moose, sea mammals, and other traditional foods. And a variety of racing events bring people out into the winter world. Learning to navigate these snow trails at human speed has opened our eyes to countless wonders of this magical place. For thousands of years, Alaska's indigenous peoples relished in winter and understood its rules and temperament. Winter, however, is not the only season for long and remote fat bike trips. Certain regions of Alaska are better approached in milder seasons. And no area is more temperamental than the high Arctic. In 2017, Kim and I accomplished a summer route entirely above the Arctic Circle, from Tikigaq to Utqiagvik, the northernmost community in the United States. The expedition was challenging but deeply rewarding. We were overjoyed to discover that most of the route was actually bikeable. Our appetite for summer Arctic expeditions had been whet, and we soon conceived of a new fat bike and packraft trip. This time, we would begin in Kotzebue and end in Tikigaq. The completion of this trip would link a series of routes we have done that stretch from further south than our home in Homer to the very tippy top of Alaska.
The second half of this trip that we're doing is fulfilling that segment of beach that we have yet to fat bike and complete that long route.
So this trip that we're on is about 200 miles, but there's really only about the last 80 miles of it that we have to complete in order to have our route be all the way continuous from South Alaska to the tippy top north of Alaska.
Clear, keeping my feet dry the whole way. As soon as we got going, it hammered us with the strongest winds of the day for a few hours, and as soon as we landed, got calm again. Had to cut way into the no-attack delta to get over here, and having that big body of challenging water with current and potential for really high winds, having that behind us now is a huge relief, and we put in a big first day, and today we get to ride the beaches.
Unless there's some real super unexpected thing, that was the most paddling we'll have to do on this trip.
Cranes, geese, swans, ducks, tons of kinds of little shorebirds and gulls, and it's just, there's bird life surrounding us at all times, so it's very nice. Yesterday was just pure fat biking bliss. Compact beaches for miles. We didn't even have to blow the rafts up once, not once.
Didn't get my feet wet.
Didn't even get our feet wet. I mean, and the weather has been just incredible.
You know, as soon as we hit the beach, we're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome riding. We were worried that it was gonna be like soft pea gravel and real grindy. And not even worried, just kind of like expecting it and like head down, like, okay, this is what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
But we hit the beach and it was this beautiful, compacted, mixed grain size. So everything, you know, it was fast and good, but not, you know, 5 minutes into the ride.
I found, ba-boom, a mammoth tooth.
Near the end of the day when we were thinking, okay, you know, it's time to start looking for a place to camp. Almost everywhere we've been, it's like beautiful campsites, level areas, lots of driftwood for fire. Water is a little bit sparse, so we did stop at one creek and refill. But we were kind of like at the point in the day, we were like, okay, it's time to start looking around for a place to camp, and we came up upon a herd of at least 15, maybe more, muskox grazing in the meadow. Last night we stopped and filmed them, photographed them, and then this morning when we were getting going, some stragglers were wandering right next to camp, and just all the bird life here is just
insane bird life, just everywhere.
And so this area, Cape Krusenstern, is known for some of the oldest archaeological sites, you know, that have been discovered in Alaska.
So we're at this pretty shitty shelter cabin that we stayed in 3.5 years ago when we passed through here on a winter trip trying to bike all the way from Nome to Point Hope. We must have left some food here because here's 2 bags of food that's totally recognizable as ours, including this cheddar broccoli soup, which I plan to eat tonight.
Yesterday was another one of these just incredible days. I was thinking about it earlier. The Arctic explorer Vilhjalmur Stephenson has a book that's titled The Friendly Arctic. And, you know, that's kind of like thought of as a little bit oxymoronic. But, you know, Kim and I have now done a lot of trips in the Arctic, and we've seen a huge array of moods. But on this trip so far, friendly is the adjective that, you know, really comes to mind. The issue has been overheating, you know, not being too cold, and we have had basically no bugs. You know, there's no bugs and there's no wind. So when we were in the Arctic for the summer trip 2 years ago, we didn't have a problem with bugs, but that was really because it was windy all the time. But this trip has really been calm and no bugs.
So the whole trip we've been documenting seabird mortalities as part of coast seabird monitoring. And basically what we do is ride along the beach, and as we see a dead seabird, I take out the little camera that I have that has a GPS locator in it. So you take the snapshot of the picture of it, it records where it is. We have been seeing incredible amounts. Yeah, we might be almost 100 total on our whole trip so far. So it's pretty sad to see That's it appears to me like, oh, this is an episode, like this is a die-off.
This summer it's been upwards of 15 degrees warmer water than normal. This just has a cascade of effects, and this is bound to be related to the warming water. I could say almost certainly that it's related to climate change.
On this route, I mean, the evidence of climate change is surrounding us. Coastal erosion occurring on the bluffs, so sea level rise, melting permafrost, these seabird die-offs. We're going to pass through Kivalina, and this is a village that is in imminent need of relocation due to sea level rise.
It's of course the Arctic, where it's kind of like out there, and yet these things that are happening because of our continued reliance on fossil fuels is affecting these far, far corners.
It's awe-inspiring to see what an intact habitat can sustain in terms of life and diversity. And, it doesn't have to be that way. We could live in a world where there aren't nearly as many birds, and it's not something that it's not a reality that I'm feel ready to face. This is a southwesterly, so it's blowing in off of the ocean, and it's generating a lot of big waves. I don't think this is the friendly Arctic anymore. The interesting thing that happens here is because it's so shallow, when it blows across the water like that, it drives the water up the beach, and you can even have flooding events. This afternoon's supposed to be the worst of it, and it's supposed to be kind of coming down over the course of the next couple of days.
We've come 5 miles out of Kivalina. Kivalina is one of the 31 recognized villages that have to be relocated due to, global warming. And, being here during a storm is just so apparent why. They're building, putting up riprap all around the village. But when these storms come in, they just inundate the village. And if they didn't have the big rocks that they're putting up now, it would have already been eroded away. It's pretty wild to be here when a storm is happening and just see how vulnerable, that place is. So we've made it to Chariot, which is famous because it's near Cape Thompson. It's the valley before Cape Thompson, which is our next crux. But it's famous because after World War II, this guy from the Atomic Energy Agency, William Teller, had this crazy idea that you could use nuclear bombs to build harbors. And he proposed to do his demonstration project here. From their perspective, it's a remote, wild, nowhere place, but there are villages on both ends of us. But at Point Hope especially is close, and this is where they come hunt caribou. And we're going to just nuke it.
This place almost got nuked.
Yeah, this place literally
almost got nuked.
They were going to turn this into a massive harbor just to demonstrate how they could do it. It's a crazy, crazy thing, and thankfully the people from Point Hope and some cooler heads prevailed. It's this really incredible, beautiful place. Really, it's been on my list of places to come see for many years.
We put the hammer to it to get here to Cape Thompson, or to the approach to Cape Thompson. So Cape Thompson also has seabird rookeries on it, which would be really exciting to see from the water. I've been continuing to do seabird mortality surveys as we've been biking along. I've been just riding along, and it has been a task, but I'm doing it because I think it's going to be valuable information to have.
Sometimes it's a little depressing. Seeing all the seabird, the dead seabirds, is like pretty striking. And then the other thing is the marine debris. You know, there's so much fucking trash. And it's of, you know, at least 3 countries that we're seeing. There's like a lot of Korean trash, Russian trash, and American trash.
Okay, it's a piece of trash, not a dead bird. I'd rather it be a piece of trash than a dead bird, because at least that, I don't know. It's sad.
Yeah. It's like the two together are kind of like a 1-2 punch, you know? Like, yeah, kind of sucks. You know, it doesn't feel like this area is like dying necessarily. You know, there's a lot of vitality here, a lot of bird species that are doing well, and marine mammals that are doing well. But you know, definitely there is a sickness, you know, that is infecting the Arctic. I know of 3 people that have done this trip, and I'm sure that there are more, but it's still very rarely done, you know, what we're doing right now. And man, you know, on a fat bike, or, you know, if you were just walking with a packraft, either way, you know, biking with a packraft or walking with a packraft, this has been such an agreeable route. You know, it's so doable and so cool.
So I built this driftwood fortification without the help of any strategy or forethought whatsoever.
Let's do the wide tour. Why don't you show us around?
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, so what do we got over here?
Okay, so basically what we're doing is barricading ourselves against the north wind that's in the forecast. Today it's supposed to rip out of the north, and we have seen North Arctic winds before on coastlines, and they're terrifying. We really want to paddle around the Cape, so we've kind of opted to make this camp and wait out the weather in the hopes that we get a calm opportunity to paddle around. This structure is designed to help barricade us from the strong north wind.
Like 7:30 last night, we finally launched, and we were able to paddle from Chariot all the way around all of the series of sheer capes to this first beach now, which is a continuous beach all the way to Point Hope, which is about 23 miles away.
After waiting several days for that offshore wind to finally calm down, we put in last evening at Crowbill Point, and there was still a little bit of wind, but the water was flat, and instantly come around the corner to just this spectacular scene of thousands of seabirds.
Like maybe millions.
Millions of seabirds, like whirling around overhead, nesting on the cliffs, diving off. The rock structures were incredibly stunning and steep. Right off the bat, there was this sea arch that we got to paddle underneath, and then it was 6 miles of the most dramatic seascape you can imagine. It was kind of difficult to take in the spectacle because we were having to paddle pretty hard, and then also just it was so high overhead. You get distracted.
it's impossible to kind of take it all in, because you're like, your eyes are looking at this big flock ball swirling this way, but meanwhile there's still a bunch of other stuff going on here, there. But like being in like Beijing or something, some city where you can't,
right?
You're like, oh, there's a lot of this organism doing its thing.
We'd look up at the cliff, and the rocks are so complex that sometimes it's just hard to tell what is a bird and what isn't, and it's almost like the entire rock was alive. We're really fortunate to have had calm enough conditions to be able to paddle, but we really did have to kind of keep our heads down. We were only making like 1.5 miles an hour. Anytime Bjørn took out the camera, we'd lose a lot of ground. Yeah, I was impressed with the current. I wasn't really expecting to see that current. Probably the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, honestly.
I put it up there with, there's like maybe 2 other things I can think of that are like comparable. But this has become, in my mind, one of the absolute preeminent fat bike packraft trips that we've ever done, for so many reasons. And these, like, this being the kind of the cherry on top is absolutely, it's a complete package.
This was the climax to an already amazing little expedition.
Yeah.
Moving at human speed while carrying all of life's necessities is a tradition as old as our species. We are exquisitely adapted to explore, to roam, to use our bodies. Periodically unshackling from the chains of civilization and engaging in the act of migration is the practice we employ that allows us to reconnect with our innate nature. Traversing vast landscapes is to be an observer of the rapid changes to our natural and cultural world. In the face of climate disruption and the emergence of the epoch known as the Anthropocene, habitat degradation, species extinction, and the oblivion of cultural ways of knowing come into sharp focus the more we slow down and pay attention to the interconnected web of life. Like mountaineers reaching a summit, Kim and I feel a tremendous sense of accomplishment whenever we reach our predetermined destination. Unlike a cold mountaintop engulfed in a lonely atmosphere, however, these destinations are part of a vast network that, when taken as a whole, represents something much larger than a dot on the globe or an isolated end goal. The pre-trip abstraction of a map or a satellite image becomes something tangible, real, familiar. An ever-expanding appreciation for this great land, known as Alaska, is our reward. We return home with an invigorated sense of connection and purpose, inspired to unlock the next secret.